Just a disclaimer before I begin. I am an American patriot. I'm a United States Army veteran. I am not an anarchist. I am not against government. I am against corrupt government. Anywhere there's corruption, the people should speak out and speak to power. And with that, I begin. This video is not a conspiracy theorist version of events that have taken place. The things that I'm about to say are just simply statements, things to get you to question, perhaps, the circumstances of events that have taken place. I'm probably saying what you really wanted to say all along, but didn't have the courage to say outside of the comfort of your basement, your attic, your private room, your barbershop conversation. And this is just a few individuals and an incident. I'm crying out today. We need justice. And even though it has a tendency to slip under us or to sort of pass through the gentle breeze, the corruption that goes on around us, but it happens, ladies and gentlemen. There is corruption in the whole world, but I'm speaking more respectfully of what happens on this continent called North America and the United States proper. I'm asking for justice and your prayers for the victims of 9/11 or 9/11, September 9/11, because it was not an outside job. It was an inside job. There is too much evidence to corroborate this fact. There are too many engineers, statements, interviews, and police officers, and fire inspectors, and fire department officials, and various other people who were on site, on the scene, that can corroborate the fact that explosives were used inside the Twin Towers. It was an inside job. Now the question is, who and why? So I'm asking for justice for all of the family members of those victims that were lost in that tragedy. I'm asking for justice again for Brandon Bruce Lee. Yes, I said that. The son of the late great martial arts legend Bruce Lee. I believe that it was not an accident on the set of the movie Crow where a blank was not placed in the gun, or a piece of fragmented metal or a real bullet, whatever the case was in a prop gun, as it were, and somehow it dislodged and killed this man on the set of the movie. I believe that it was a setup. Now you may ask me why. I'll tell you why. Even though Brandon had said in many interviews that he wasn't trying to take his father's place, he wasn't trying to be his father because he couldn't be his father. He said, I'm just an actor. I'm trying to perfect my skills. But understand this. If you watched his earlier bodies of work, the one that he did with Dolph Lundgren when he played a police officer, there was a scene or two when he resembled his father. And since he studied Jeet Kune Do and some other martial arts systems coming up after his father's death, he became a threat to the people in the martial arts community who were in Hollywood. Enough said. So you think on these things. I love Linda Lee Cadwell, and I love Brandon Lee Kessler and their family. This is not disrespectful to them. This is my viewpoint. So justice for Brandon Bruce Lee. Justice for Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. He was an outspoken member of the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Louis Farrakhan. He was a controversial individual, very well loved and very well hated at the same time. This man spoke the truth. He appeared back in the earlier years on the Phil Donahue show at the time on a couple of episodes where he had to be questioned, or was questioned I should say, about his feelings towards Jews and whites in general. If you notice that he carried his weapon with him, and his weapon was nothing more than the facts. He had his books, he had the Quran, he had the papers, he had the law. He carried it all with him. Now, what better enemy could you have than one who is telling you the truth? Not that he's really your enemy by nature, but he's the enemy of the enemy. So if your enemy or your, what's that word, oppressor, is confronted with the truth, especially on a large scale, as far as the public is concerned, they become uneasy and threatened. So they have to remove you. Now they say that he died of an allergic reaction to some sort of medication that he took. That didn't happen. That was an inside job. They wanted to remove Khalid. And I will forever miss him and his teachings. So will hundreds of thousands and even millions of others. And I'm not a Muslim. So, justice to Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. Justice to Sherry Peel Jackson, a black former IRS agent. She was arrested, imprisoned for basically informing the American public that they didn't have to pay taxes. Not following the good old boy system or the status quo. And I'll leave it at that. She went to prison. Now, right alongside her was a white gentleman who was an IRS agent, an enforcer, who actually was an armed enforcer for the IRS. He would go out and visit individuals who were delinquent in their taxes. That's Joe Bannister. He said that he was confronted or addressed by someone he was going to serve. And they asked him the question, where is it in the book that it says that we have to pay taxes? And why do we have to? He said he had never been asked that before. So he went back to his office and began to study. And they say he studied for approximately 2 full years the tax regulations and the tax laws. And he said he had never found where you had to pay income taxes and that it was volunteer or voluntary. So he confronted or addressed his superior, the head. And he told him what was on his mind. And he said, would you answer this question? Where does it say in the tax code that you have to pay it? And he said he gave him so many days to answer, and he never received an answer. So he resigned his position. And ever since then, he's been an advocate for those people who have been abused by the IRS and its unlawful practices. Now, don't forget, the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, originally began in Puerto Rico, and the IRS is a private company. Has nothing to do with what we know as the federal government. They are their own entity. And that's Joe Bannister. Justice for Irwin Schiff, a white tax expert. He wrote a book. That book can be found on eBay and Amazon. The title escapes me at the moment, but it has basically to do with the United States being gangsters as far as the taxes and the collection of taxes are concerned. He was another IRS component, if you will. He was an advocate for not paying taxes because tax or IRS taxation was actually unlawful. Now, they like to use the word legal. Legal is not a factual word. It's only factual in fiction. But legal and law, there's a distinct demarcation. There's a distinction between those. They're not the same. When you say legal and you say law, it's two different things. Law is that which is factual. Legal is that which is fictional. So you have to do your research on that one. But Irwin Schiff, may God rest his soul, he's passed on now. But this man was imprisoned. And he was given 13 years for telling the American people that they didn't have to pay taxes. This man was in his 80s. This man died as a result of being imprisoned, given poor health care. They did not tend to him. Why? Because he didn't matter to them. Because he was in opposition to the status quo again. So, justice for Sherry P.O. Jackson, Joe Bannister, and the late Irwin Schiff. Justice for Prince, the singer. There's something shady about his passing as well, and it has just come to light, however subtle it may be, that there was probably some deception on how he actually passed away. Someone could have poisoned Prince. Now, Prince was he was a threat to some people in the music industry. Now, you can do your due diligence and your research. This is not meant to be a major book, this video. I'm just touching on some basics. And justice for Michael Jackson, one of the greatest entertainers of the 20th and the 21st century. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's death was not mysterious. It was planned. Yes, he took prescription medication to keep him going. Yes, he may have even had some signs of depression, and as a result of all of the workload that he had and all of the nonsense that he was dealing with in the music industry, especially Sony. Who knows? But Michael's death was orchestrated. Michael could have been saved had they wanted to save Michael. But Michael was too powerful. One individual in the music industry, yes, he was powerful. Despite what anyone says. Even though he was my favorite entertainer, this disclosure that I'm giving right now is not biased, because I mentioned many other individuals that were not in the music industry per se. But Michael was killed. He was murdered intentionally. He was allowed to die, and he was intentionally not given the proper medical attention. So justice for Prince and justice for Michael Jackson. Justice for Kevin Trudeau. Many of you probably remember his name and the infomercials, natural cures they don't want you to know about, and various other books that he had published over time. Kevin Trudeau was given a 10-year prison sentence for telling people or exposing the truth about big pharma, pharmaceutical companies, that is, and about the food and drug industry, how they wanted to keep people sick, and how you could not tell people that you could be healed or cured from a disease. When in fact, I'm supporting him now. You can be cured and you can be healed. But the fact of the matter is, they don't want you to be healed, ladies and gentlemen. They don't want you to be healed because there's no money in a healthy individual. Let me give you a scenario while I'm here. If there's a hospital that's across the street from your house and they have 500 patients, those patients equate to a dollar amount. The hospital staff has to be paid. The pharmacy has to be paid. The doctors have to be paid. The janitors have to be paid. Housekeeping, maintenance, utility companies, and the upkeep in general. All of that has to be paid, even with that 500 people bed or capacity hospital. 500 people all paying their patients. Some like to call us consumers, but they're patients. Now, what if, just what if, some private individual, some outside entity were to pass out some literature, put up some commercials, throw up some billboards, write some books, that a lot of the medical attention that you're receiving in that hospital can be averted, or it can be changed, or some of your conditions can be alleviated, if not completely eradicated, if you were to change your lifestyle. If you were to start eating certain things and taking other things out of your routine or diet. And then this begins to pick up some momentum. Don't believe for a moment that the powers that be that control that medical facility across the street from you are not paying attention now. Because now you are potentially affecting their income. So let's say they lost half of their patients. Now they have 250 patients as opposed to 500. They lost the 250 to the natural path, the homeopathic medicine, the individuals who decided to live their life differently and change their lifestyle and start doing things more naturally. They lost half their patients or consumers. So in losing half their patients, that means that they can't perform surgery on those 250 people and receive money from that, which there's a lot of money in that. They can't receive any money from giving them prescriptions to have filled out. They can't receive money from those other 250 patients because there's no doctor fees incurred. So someone in the hospital is going to lose their job, possibly. Maybe the hospital is going to have to shut down because the revenue that it was accustomed to receiving has now been relinquished to have. Now, this is just a hypothetical example, but do you get the point? If you start taking the patients away and you trim it down, like trimming the fat down to half or even less than half, someone starts to suffer financially. So the moral of that story is this: when you're healthy, You don't need to go to the hospital. And when you're healthy, you don't have to pay any hospital bills and doctor fees and radiology. You don't have to pay all of these anesthesiology bills and so on and so forth, nor does your insurance company. You don't have to pay that. So the hospital's not receiving that. So when a person or an individual like Kevin Trudeau comes along and saying, well, you don't have to take medicine, and this causes diseases, and this causes this condition, and so on and so forth, then they have to shut you up, because you're bucking against the system now, the status quo, and you're messing with our income because you are drawing a following, and that following is becoming substantial. And when it's substantial, then it can really affect our pockets. So we have to get rid of you. And that's what happened to Kevin Trudeau and people like him. And another one that I'm going to mention that was similar to that individual was Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi won a case in the Supreme Court where he was dispensing natural medicine to patients. And they were claiming that they were healed. And the claim was not fraudulent. They actually were. And when he went to court, he had doctors in attendance, medical doctors and surgeons standing in place. And he was bombarded with questions from the prosecution. And these doctors were being questioned, as were himself. And he answered every question lawfully. And he had his witnesses there that attested to the fact that they had this particular condition and that particular condition, and now they had it no more. So he won his Supreme Court case, Dr. Sebi. Now somewhere he was convicted about a year ago. Now he's from Haiti, but he was convicted about a year ago for having an extreme amount of money in his pocket at an airport. So they arrested him. Now he didn't believe in banks necessarily, but this man, I believe he was in his between 60 and 80 years old. I just put it there, somewhere around there. But this man was well up in age. I forget his exact age right now, it escapes me. But he was well beyond 60. And this man was in great physical condition because he was a participant in his own teaching. Clean, purified water, eating from nature, not eating contaminated and polluted and adulterated foods that you find in the grocery stores traditionally. He was healthy. Now, how is it that this man died of bad health all of a sudden after he was incarcerated? Yes, he basically died in jail, given poor medical condition again too. Just like Michael Jackson. He could have been treated better, but they did not want to treat him better. They did not want to give him or administer to him good health and good medical practices, as it were, because he was a threat, an indirect threat. He was not an intentional threat. He was just doing what we should all be doing by nature in the first place. Dr. Sebi and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, both of them died within a year, within this past year, 2016. She died a mysterious death too. She's the author of the ISIS papers. She's a clinical psychologist. This woman basically laid a blueprint for how the white supremacy movement began, how it is continuing even today, and how it basically and fundamentally has turned blacks against each other, and how they have caused blacks to be trodden underfoot of those people who believe that black people are still second class, and not even second class citizens. We're probably third class citizens now. But basically, she points out in her book, The ISIS Papers, and she's pointed out in many of her lectures how blacks are treated the way that they are, and it is institutionalized. It is something that was deliberate and is still deliberate to this very day, the treatment that black people receive as a whole. Now, notwithstanding those individuals that have made it, so to speak, the superstars, the sports individuals, or the icons, and the people in the entertainment industry and music and all of this stuff. It's just a comparison of the majority. The amount of people that are wealthy, in other words, that are black, are less than 5% of the black population. So what does that mean to anyone? Nothing. Just because you see an Oprah Winfrey, a Michael Jordan, a Tyler Perry, Denzel Washington, what does that mean? They don't do anything for blacks. If they did anything for blacks, it would be blacks in Africa or somewhere else, but not in America, because there's an unwritten rule that if you do anything for blacks in America and you are a black entertainer, they remove you from your throne. And all black rappers know this. All black movie stars and actors and actresses know this. All black entertainers across the board know this. If you begin to try to reach down and pull your people up from their trenches, so to speak, and try to educate them on how to come out of that position, you become a threat to someone, especially when they start to rise in numbers. So they just decide that once I leave my black community and reach my status, I don't need to look back anymore. And that's pretty much the ideology. So, justice to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and Dr. Sebi. Now, finally, in this particular segment, I did a video on this earlier, but Vietnamese born and American doctor, Dr. David Dow, he was a victim of America, of the Chicago Aviation Department police, when he was forcibly removed from a plane because they wanted his seat to seat someone else. He was a paid passenger en route to Louisville, Kentucky, which is where he practices medicine. They removed him forcibly from his seat after he told them that he was not leaving, and he called United Airlines on the phone, and he was telling them what was going on at the same time. But he ended up being injured by the police, and they settled his case out of court on the 27th of this month, April 2017, and it happened April the 9th. Now you go figure how fast that case got resolved. So this was Dr. David Dow, and I still say justice for him, because he deserves everything that he received and even more. And for all of those passengers who did not bite the bullet and compromise their integrity and their dignity, as it were, by accepting a refund from United Airlines and siding with Dr. Dow, I applaud you. You've done your due service to your fellow American. Humanitarianism is not dead on every front, only from those that make up the rules. It's that simple. So I'm asking for justice for all of the aforementioned, and I'm asking you to pray with me, and I'm asking you to do your research into all of these cases. And it's just a drop in the bucket. There's many more. But this video would be too exhaustive, and you probably wouldn't even take the time to go through the video. But I just thought I'd just drop this little nugget for you and to give you something to think about. This video is not designed to make you happy. It's not designed to incite anger. You might have mixed emotions behind this. Whatever your emotions are, you need to really sit down as a mature adult and ask yourself the question: does this have any validity? Anything that he said, does this have any credence? Does it make sense? Is it logical? Or do I just go away and shut myself in a room somewhere and ignore the things that brother teacher said because he's just crazy? You know I'm not crazy. And I'm not the first person that's ever brought these things up. And I surely won't be the last. Can we have justice today, ladies and gentlemen? May Yahweh bless you. He loves you, and I love you. So long. Oh, don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section below.